For Real Agriculture, I'm Kelvin Hepner. The effects of U.S. tariffs in general have maybe not been as significant as feared or possible when they were rolled out back in February, March timeframe. But there are certain products coming into Canada that are still subject to tariffs, especially the Canadian counter-tariffs. And joining us to discuss here on Real Ag, I'm pleased to welcome Lauren Comin, Director of Policy at Seeds Canada. Thanks for joining us once again today, Lauren.
Hi, Kelvin. Thanks for having me.
So how are tariffs affecting the seed side of things right now? And in particular, I guess the Canadian government's counter tariffs that were implemented in retaliation for the Trump administration's tariffs back in early March.
So it's been a pretty rocky road for the seed sector. I know it's been a rocky road for everyone, but the seed sector, we've had a number of products that came in and out of concern. When the first counter tariff list, so that's the $30 billion list, was released from the government on March 4th, you would have seen low uric acid rape or colza seed. If you look at that HS code, 1205.10.00, that's actually the HS code for canola seed. And when we say canola seed, usually, we're talking about commodity. But because canola seed for sowing is covered at the at the 8-digit HS code level by that HS code on the list, canola seed for sowing is included as well. In the second list that was put out for consultation, there were a lot of different agricultural seeds of concern. So obviously we submitted our comments during the consultation period. Our position generally is seed should not be tariffed. We have a very complementary relationship with the US when it comes to seed trade. Luckily, that secondary list was not implemented, not saying that it couldn't be in the future. But right now we still have significant concerns with canola seed being on that first list. And those concerns are really going to, come to a head here in a couple of months when canola seed is harvested from the Pacific Northwest in the US, to be moved up into Canada to be used for domestic canola production.
To what extent is our canola seed market here in Canada supplied by production from the U.S.,
Mhm.
if you can put some numbers to it, or just even
Yeah.
ballpark kind of rough estimates?
Sure. So I think, anyone who doesn't know about the intricacies of canola seed production may say, why is that a problem? We produce so much canola here in Canada, right? We are the land of canola in Western Canada. And yes, that's true. But the seed production system of canola is sensitive, and it has different needs than commodity canola production. So we produce about 70% of the seed that we use domestically in Canada. We produce about 25% in the US, and another 5% comes from South America, mainly Chile. And the reason why we have seed that's coming from the US at 25% is a pretty significant level. I think most people would be surprised to hear that we do source that much, is that there's only so much land in southern Alberta, and southern Alberta it's a great environment for producing canola. But much of our canola production is traded, not traded. So some of those traits are regulated traits, and there is a requirement for seed production for seed plots to be isolated from any other canola production plot. So that isolation distance really does limit the number of acres that can be put into seed production. Another factor is seed production is vulnerable to environment. So you need to make sure that you have quality seed and it germinates at the end of the day. And if it's, too hot, too rainy, etc., you may lose some of your production and not be able to sell it as seed. So many companies will spread out the risk across the Pacific Northwest as well, to make sure that they are able to have adequate seed of the right quality when it comes time for farmers to plant their crop.
Okay. So the Canadian government, Lauren, has granted exemptions elsewhere, and there is kind of this narrative out there, at least there have been some reports about how the Carney Liberal government has quietly backed off on a lot of the counter tariffs, and that they aren't affecting as many things as originally said. What's the possibility of a reprieve, or what are the next steps in terms of that process, and is what's the likelihood, I guess, of canola seed and other seeds that are potentially affected by these 25% tariffs having a reprieve from them?
So obviously, we've had a lot of uncertainty. It's a very volatile time. The discussions that are being had at a very high level. So, we've been told that the tariff lists, if any changes are made to the existing tariff lists, it'll be done because of discussions between the U.S. and Canadian trade delegations. So, we're not going to see that canola seed HS code quietly erased from the list. If that still saying if that's a possibility, sure, we'll take it. But I don't think that's going to happen. There is a remission framework that's a possibility, and we are encouraging members who are impacted to submit into the remission framework. But that being said, anything could happen in the next 30 days. Prime Minister Carney has already signaled that he wants to get back to the table and discuss tariffs within the next 30 days. So obviously, we're hopeful that we'll resolve these concerns. As I mentioned, trade of seed between the U.S. and Canada is very complementary. Canada imports and exports about $500 million of seed each year between Canada and the US. So, we don't have those trade deficits that have been mentioned previously. And because of the free trade relationship that both countries have enjoyed in the past for seed, they've built that into their production systems. So it is really important for supply in Canada for Canadian farmers to have access to the seed they need, that we're able to access the US market without adding any additional cost to seed.
Okay. It does feel like the general conversation when you talk to people in trade affected industries is that, oh, tariffs haven't been as bad as what we thought they could be, or as bad as they were the first couple days when we paid a tariff for a couple days and then it was exempted due to USMCA or CUSMA exemptions on the US side, that type of thing. Are you Do you feel that this has kind of been lost in the shuffle and in terms of the maybe the political pressure to remove these counter tariffs isn't what it would have been earlier because that narrative exists?
Yeah, I think so. With the CUSMA exemptions on the US side, most of the seed that we produce in Canada that we move to the US, we haven't had a problem with it because you can fairly easily prove that Canada is the country of production. But on this canola piece, there's a few factors. So, there's that piece where everybody got really excited about we were moving seed into the US. It's going to have a 25% additional tariff tacked onto it. But I think there's also timing. So many of our members, they watch the news and they look at Twitter. They knew that tariffs could be coming. So over the Christmas holidays and before the tariffs were implemented, they were running sort of 24/7, trying to move seed around and get things resolved before it would have an impact on the 2025 cropping year. So 2025 cropping year, you wouldn't have seen the significant impact of tariffs on the price of seed or the availability of seed. Now, as the tariffs, as we continue to move through the calendar year, we're getting closer to when seed would need to start to move for the 2026 cropping year. So I think everyone was sort of paying attention to, what's moving into the US and what could additionally be added other than canola. And then, when that wave was sort of over, now we're kind of back to, okay, well, what is going to impact us for 2026? So the longer the tariffs go on, the seed wouldn't have already moved. So we're going to feel the impact if something doesn't change within the next month or two.
Okay. So, and I guess that leads me to my next question. How is the market? How are these companies adjusting? The crop is obviously in the ground. The seed production cycle is well underway. Are they adapting production plans, pricing? I guess that who's bearing the cost of the
Mhm.
tariff potentially, and I guess, yeah, how's the market adjusting to the possibility of this tariff on the 2026 seed production?
I think each member is going to try something a little bit different. Obviously we do have production in Canada, and we'll see how far that gets us. We are hoping for change, though. I think things have been so volatile, and maybe we're hoping for that volatility that it'll actually work in our favor over the next few months. Certainly, Seeds Canada has been talking to the Department of Finance, Department of Agriculture, international trade, making sure that everyone understands the significance. And I think for their part, they do. They are sympathetic to this, and I don't think it was a situation that they intended to have happen. But we'll see. I guess we'll see. I think farmers, in the canola industry as a whole, are getting hit from either end now, because we have the Chinese tariffs on oil and meal, and what will be the impact of demand for canola production as we go along, and then there will be the seed side. So just a lot of uncertainty, which is really not a great condition for anyone's business, but for farmers and the seed sector, it can be especially damaging.
Mhm. Of course, in concept, the idea behind Canada's counter tariffs is to affect American businesses. Are you hearing, or is there discussion on the American side of the border about the impact of these tariffs on canola seed production stateside?
And I know most of our companies that are working in canola do have operations on both sides of the border. So most of the production is moving up into Canada. We still dominate in terms of canola production. So the Canadian seed or the American seed industry, sorry, is very much in line with the Canadian seed industry. We both really want to see the free trade relationship that we have enjoyed in the past continued. No one no one is trying to one up the other, and trying to push a bunch of American seed into Canada. That's simply not happening. Um, the seed trade, it's global. Canada cannot produce certain species of seed. So we have to source from all over the world. So it's seed trade, it's absolutely critical to food security and to the ongoing success of Canadian agriculture, that we do have free and open trade.
All right. Finally, then, Lauren, what's next, or what's our best hope for resolution on this? Is it a political solution at the highest levels? Is this something that if we see an agreement of some form between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump, that we should be asking this question if these tariffs have been lifted?
That one is incredibly hard to predict. And if you're able to predict what's going to happen there, I think you should probably be have a much like larger global platform, Kelvin. Um,
I'm not able to, so clearly.
well, me neither. So I think there are some avenues for our membership to explore, and that does include the remission framework. Things are already, they're in the ground now, and trying to sort things out in future years is going to be difficult, but it may need to be looked at. Uh, I personally don't think things are going to extend into future years. We're coming up to a CUSMA review here in January 2026. So we're going to start conversations in the coming months. So I think that there is going to be resolution. Unfortunately, canola happened to be a victim in a much larger plot. Um, so I think government resolution in the long term, but in the short term, we're hoping for some relief through a remission framework if possible.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll certainly stay tuned and keep in touch, Lauren, on this file as it continues to unfold.
Sounds great. Thank you.
For the latest ag news, agronomic advice, and more, check out realagriculture.com and Real Ag Radio.